One of the great perks of this job is that I have the opportunity to meet inspiring and iconic figures. Today I'm joined by Billie Jean King, someone who clearly fits both of those categories. She's perhaps best known for her legendary match against Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes, but it's her work in advocating for equality and diversity that has marked her not just as a terrific competitor, but also as a true champion of the underdog. The NCAA honored her tonight with the Gerald R. Ford Award, a distinction shared by, among others, UCLA legend John Wooden, the father of Title IX, former Senator Birch Bayh, and women's rights advocate Christine Grant, who Billie Jean called her Shiro. It truly is an honor. Thanks so much for joining me, Billie Jean.
Thanks, Marta. It's wonderful to be here.
So, you know, few, and really no one has matched your Wimbledon record. You've accomplished so much in sport, but you know, I like to think that sports probably taught you quite a bit too. Can you tell me some of the life lessons you learned?
Well, there's so many, and I think sports taught me probably more about the disciplines of life and how to get through each day and how to use sports metaphors and experiences probably than any other thing I've experienced except my own parents, and to some degree my education as well, beyond the court. But some of the disciplines that it really teaches you is accepting responsibility, to stay in the process, to stay in the now, because if you don't stay in the now, you basically choke. If you're thinking about the future or the past, you don't play at your optimum. You don't play your best. It teaches you to be nimble, to really take in feedback and use it in the best possible way. Like I always say, there's no such thing as failure, it's just feedback. And it's true that we keep using life's experiences to help us through each day. For instance, when I'm hitting a tennis ball over the net, I have to accept responsibility as it comes to me. I have to make a decision, and then I hit the ball, and then there's a consequence, immediate consequence, and I have to live with it. Now, if I'm just practicing, very few people see the mistake, for instance, or if it goes out. But if you're in front of millions, they know it's going out, but they also know when it's going in. But I just use that as feedback. I miss it. I know I missed it maybe by a foot or 6 inches, so the next time I get a similar shot, then I'll make the correction. So you're always correcting, just the way you do in real life. And it's just so helpful.
You're also the founder of the Women in Sports Foundation.
Yeah, Women's Sports Foundation, yes.
And, you know, it's really interesting to me in the generation that I'm in to know, and I've had a lot of experience being able to meet so many women who had participated in athletics before Title IX was enacted. What inspired you to first pick up a racket?
It was actually, I was in 5th grade, and right next to me in the classroom, Mrs. Delph's class, Susan Williams, her dad had just been transferred to Long Beach, California, where I grew up. And she loved sports too, and I'm just getting to know her, and she looks at me and she goes, "Do you want to play tennis?" And I said, "You know, what's tennis?" And she said, "Well, you get to run and you get to jump and hit a ball." Well, those were my 3 favorite things at that age. So I said, "I'm there." So I went with her and we tried it, and then they had free instruction in Long Beach public parks, and that's really the reason I was able to play tennis, because I was able to have this free instruction. And Clyde Walker was my first instructor, and he was so much fun. After the first day of getting instruction from him, I had really found out what I was going to do with my life. I told my mother and my brother, Randy, and my dad, I said, "This is what I'm going to do with my life. I want to be #1 tennis player in the world." And I had people in Long Beach tennis patrons, Long Beach Century Club, and all these different people in the city who believed in me eventually, and Harold Guyver, and they helped me with money to go to my first Wimbledon when I was 17, and without them I wouldn't have had this opportunity. So you never do anything alone, really. And God gave my brother and me the potential. You have to always learn your craft, but your
brother was in the major leagues?
Yeah, Randy Moffat, my baby brother, 6'3". He became a professional baseball player, and he knew at 10 years old that's what he wanted to do, was be a Major League Baseball player. And I always thought Randy should have been a fielder or a third base because he had such a great arm. And
right.
He had 20/10 vision, and of course he ended up being a pitcher because he was the only child. See, in the old days they didn't have T-ball So he was the only child who could get the ball within 8 feet of his home plate for pitching. So that's why they made him a pitcher. He was a little more accurate than the others. But I used to go to his games when he was 7 or 8, when he was in the Kiwanis T-shirt league, and you know, it was a miracle if the child could pitch, somebody could actually hit, somebody could actually pick up feel the ball and actually throw it to first base. That was like a miracle to see that all happen, and that's why T-ball's always, I think, been a good innovation to help just expedite here, because oh my gosh, it was amazing. And the sun would be setting, and we're going, hurry up, it's getting cold. And of course, cold in Southern California, it's all relative.
Yeah, I was going to say, I grew up in Ohio, probably not as cold as it gets there, but still.
Well, I've lived in Chicago and New York, so I appreciate that.
You know, you talk about opportunity, and the opportunity that you were given as a young woman. You know, I had the terrific opportunity myself over these last couple years to interview many men and women about the impact that Title IX has had on their lives. And many of the women who I interviewed mentioned you, and,
really?
and many of the men as well mentioned you. And you know, some of them even got pretty emotional talking about what your match with Bobby Riggs meant to their lives. What does it mean?
It was very symbolic because of the timing. Remember, June 23rd, 1972, Title IX was passed. I played Bobby Riggs in September of '73. So Title IX was in its infancy. A lot of people still were skeptical, and what I wanted that match to do was to start to change the hearts and minds of people to match the legislation of Title IX.
Right.
That boys and girls deserve equal opportunities and equal rights, always. It's a no-brainer. And at this time, girls were not having equal opportunity. We're basically women, if you look at the whole world, we're the ones that are underserved. And that's slowly but surely changing through microfinancing. Title IX has created a whole new situation. I mean, now it's 60-40 or whatever it is, more women enrolled in college and universities. And now I'm worried, you know, come on guys, we should be at 51-49. It should be 51% women, 49. So now we have a new challenge. But I must say in 1978, many of the people wanted to weaken Title IX, and one of the things they put in was proportionality. And at that time, men were 60-40, so the men thought, aha, this is smart. We will always be in charge, because we're at 60 and the women are at 40. What they didn't realize is that any time people are oppressed and you open the doors, like Title IX did for women, they get it. They understand, they appreciate. We're used to getting crumbs, and no human being should always be settling for crumbs. Right. Everybody deserves the icing on the icing, and that's it.
You know, we're seeing some of that same kind of inspirational energy now. Next week we inaugurate our first African-American president. And, you know, it truly is kind of a legacy of inspiration that you, for women, a lot of women would say you helped start. So.
Well, we're going to get rid of the race card on that day of inauguration. We still have a gender card situation, which is a whole other discussion, but it's thrilling to see Obama in that position. You know, if you look back at history, people asked me like 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago if what do you think? You know, it was Obama, Hillary, or whatever, and, or Clinton, I should say, or Senator Clinton at that time. I said, well, if history repeats itself, he'll win. And they're going, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, men got to vote 50 years before any woman got to vote, and people don't realize, and that means including men of color. And I said, so if history repeats itself, and that's why I always want young people to understand as much history as they can, because when you understand history, you know more about yourself. Right. So when young people read about history and know about it, just know it's really about you. It's not about, it is about older people, but we all stand on the shoulders of each generation. Yes, we do. So the young people will be standing on Obama's shoulder, but I stood on the shoulders of the people that came before me, and we try, in each generation, you want to help people stand on your shoulders to keep moving forward and be connected generationally. I think is one of the most inspirational things for me personally, but I think it's also very connective and helps us be as one, and it really connects us all to each other. So I think it's important for young people to say, oh, I hate history. Get into it. Learn it. Learn even about, if you like film, learn through film. If you like music, learn through music. If you like dance, sports, whatever, just because sports are a microcosm of society. So if you know about the past and you know how it was working, like when I was first playing tennis as a non-professional, I was making $14 a day. Well, if you look at the checks the players get today, I mean, Venus Williams just got a check for $1.3 million in 1 week. You go, wow. Well, that's just the way, it's about history. It's also about the evolution of women doing better. It's about people wanting more equality for men and women. It's all those stories are in that. Use those examples to understand history, but more importantly, the young people today have to shape the future. So I want them to think, where do they want the world to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now? Because the young people, because the older, more mature people pass the baton down to the next generation, but each generation passes the baton like a relay race. And that's why I think it's important for the young people to start thinking, how do they want this world to look 5, 10, and maybe when they look in the mirror and when they're in their 60s like me, are they going to be proud of their legacy? Are they going to be proud of what they did to contribute to whatever they wanted for this world that we live in?
You know, the very last question that I have for you, not only have you been an inspiration to women and men everywhere about gender equity issues, but there are many gay men and women out there who find a tremendous amount of inspiration in you. Elton John even wrote Philadelphia Freedom for you. I mean, let's be honest.
That's before we weren't even both out by then. We probably didn't even understand ourselves yet. You know, we're still trying to figure out who we were then.
So I want to ask you. You know, I've spoken with many GLBT advocates, and one of the things that they say is that athletics, and especially intercollegiate athletics, needs to do better.
Yes.
What do you think we in the intercollegiate athletics community can do to support respect and fair treatment among all of our student athletes?
First of all, it has to be safe, because I can't come out as a gay woman or a lesbian or whatever, or a bisexual or transgender, unless there's safety. And one of the scariest things for us is if we come out to somebody that, first of all, they're not going to like us, we won't see them again, there'll be hate involved, that you feel like you're physically not safe. Right. So a safe atmosphere. The most important thing that could happen, which has not happened yet, to my knowledge, is that if quarterbacks and captains of straight quarterbacks and straight captains of basketball teams, men or women, would come out and say, we don't care.
The leaders.
Leaders have to set it, and most of them are too chicken. They don't have the courage, and they're afraid they're going to be rebuffed by all their teammates and their families, instead of realizing that until they truly lead, or people who look up to them, they have to say it's okay. In fact, they welcome it, that we welcome our similarities and we celebrate our differences, and that is so important in anything, not just the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community. But I must say it took me a long time to come to grips with my sexuality. I probably didn't really come to grips with it until I was 51. It's been a long journey, and you have to understand things were a lot different back when I was outed, which I would never out somebody. Because unless somebody's ready for anything, they're not ready. No. One of the things you learn in psychotherapy is until you're ready, you're not ready. And I would never push that on anybody. But the more that we can personalize it, the more that we can say the words gay, lesbian, transgender, and just say it like it's nothing. Or don't even, just make us mainstream.
Call them people.
People, thank you. But our sexuality you don't say the straight football player. And it's only because we're a minority. And when you're a minority, you're always
labeled.
It's not even just labeled, but people can get away with it because of the numbers game. And that's where you have to be a big person. You have to think beyond yourself and you're prejudiced. You have to catch yourself. We're all prejudiced, but we have to catch ourselves when we know we're going, oh, I'm being prejudiced here. I got to, you think in your mind, stop, and what's the right thing to do here? Even if I'm uncomfortable. People get very uncomfortable. And so the more comfortable I can be as a lesbian in my own skin, the better it is for the people next to me. Like they can go, she's comfortable. If she's okay, I'm actually okay. But when there's all that kind of like tension and not sure how to handle it. It just creates tension and escalates with people. And it's very important that everyone's safe, feels safe, and that we just speak. It's just like talk.
Right.
Don't get into like having to measure your words. But we need leadership. We need the straight community to stand up there, just like for the race community or disability community or anything. Say, this is unacceptable. We're not going to do it. In fact, I embrace it. I welcome it. This person's a teammate of mine, and that's it. Let's go.
Yep.
And if you're the leader of the team, the other guys are either going to ostracize you or whatever. But you got to stand tall because it's the right thing to do. And as I said earlier, sometimes we have to do things that are not popular. But I'll tell you one thing. You'll live a lot better in your own soul when you know you've done the right thing, even though the road may be a little tougher, but it's much more gratifying.
You know, if your story has taught us anything about leadership, and it's taught us many lessons about leadership, that certainly speaks to opportunities for young men and women in the future to stand up and tell their own story and be leaders in their own skin.
Yeah, it's important. But thank you for having me,
You know
Maria.
what? I really appreciate, and you know, on behalf of all the women out there, I'm a young woman myself, you know, I have benefited from your legacy, and I want to thank you myself.
I appreciate that. Can I just touch on that?
You can absolutely touch on that.
Let me just touch on it. This is what happens to me.
I'm not going to cut off Billie Jean King.
This is what happens to me as a woman, okay? And I don't want to complain, but I'm frustrated. It's not a complaint. It's a complaint. It's a frustration and also a challenge. When a woman does something, they think we only did it for women. It's very interesting. You never go up to a male tennis player and say, thanks for what you did for men's tennis.
Yep.
You say, what? Thanks for what you did for tennis.
Yeah.
But people come up to me and say, thanks for what you did for women's tennis, even though I fought for pro tennis, which actually helped the boys more than the girls.
Yeah.
And then in my real job, it's world team tennis, which is equal men and women on a team. And yet people, it's so funny, when a woman does something, people think we only do it for women. I'm like, I do it for the universe, for men and women. I never think I'm doing something just for women. The only place I might think a little bit that way is microfinancing, but guess what? Women have boys and girls as babies.
Right.
So we're always helping both genders, both men and women. So I just wanted the young people out there, or not so young people, but I would love comments, because this has happened to me my whole life. I've always kept it to myself until about 3 months ago, and I'm starting to talk about it.
As a human being, then,
thank you.
I thank you for the differences that you've made for athletics and for opportunity, because I think not just women benefit, certainly, but I think men do as well.
No, but I understand where you're coming from. You are a woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I get. But it's just so interesting how that happens in daily life. And this makes sense because you are a woman, you're talking to a woman. But I don't know. I think, do you know what I mean when people do that? Anyway, I don't know. I need your help. Thank you, Marta.
Billie Jean King.
Thanks.
My gosh, what an honor. I
great.
appreciate it
Thanks
very much. Thank you. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This has been a treat. Billie Jean King.